where does inflation come from? It only comes from manipulating money. So why do you need to steal money from people to live in a productive society? None of the noise matters at all. It's repricing everything. People won't need to understand Bitcoin like you do, or I do, or anything else. You're going to be just getting so much value out of the product or service that they're using on top of it. Just like they don't do the deep work on what TCP/IP is today.
Everything will actually be built on top of Bitcoin.
But Robin, that's a really important thing that you just said, because
why are we both so passionate about a deflationary sound money system as Bitcoin? Like, why are we even talking so much about that kind of a future?
Yeah, and let's not say deflation as a monetary system, because I think it's a more accurate way to say a neutral monetary system that can't be manipulated. Means that the natural state of the free market is deflationary. And I know that's for your new listeners, that's going to sound crazy, because all economics is taught on top of a system that you must have inflation to live in a productive society. But you have to ask yourself, why is that true, right? Why do you need to, and where does inflation come from? Or long-term inflation come from? It only comes from manipulating money, making up more money. So why do you need to steal money from people to live in a productive society? And especially when the productivity flows naturally to society in the form of lower prices in a free market. So, and if you just explore how that happens, if you say scarce things become stuck, they go up in price, and entrepreneurs go and create value by attacking those things and making them abundant and bringing value. And you wouldn't use the thing that an entrepreneur creates unless it created more value in your life. And so now, when you see that, and let's just use a couple of examples, right? This Riverside app that we're on right now, you wouldn't be using this one specifically. You would be using Zoom or something else. Or if the value of this didn't give you tons of value, if this raised in price to a whole bunch more, you would use a different service. Use another one. If Google all of a sudden charged you $1 a search, you would use a different service. And so you can see by your own actions, each of us is driving the value that we determine down, right? So through that action. And as those prices fall, we live in a monetary system that's opposite. It's built on debt. And so as those prices fall in a free market, if you allowed it to happen in the market we live in currently, the prices would collapse. It's not just prices, the entire economic system would collapse because it's built on debt. And debt gets more expensive with deflation. So you can't pay that back, the debt. So we live in a world, it's a crazy paradox, right? We live in a world where we should know that everything we do is we're trying to find more value in. And we celebrate those entrepreneurs that are giving us more value. But we also live in a world that a lot of that value has to be extracted from us to protect the existing monetary system.
And what would now happen if, it's a crazy experiment and it probably will not happen, but all of the governments decide on the world, let's stop all the money printers. Let's just stop creating more debt. And they have so much debt, so they kind of have to repay it, but they have to repay it to themselves or the future generations. What would happen to if the Federal Reserve all of a sudden says, no more money issuing, no more money printing, nothing gets out there?
Yeah, well, you can see so as they start to tighten, you could see what's happening right now in China, and you have a deflationary spiral. Right? Yesterday, the stock prices fell 8% before they essentially shut down markets and stopped the prices from falling because they would have kept falling. And now today they're talking about what type of stimulus they're going to do, essentially what type of monetary easing are they going to do. Because if you forget, not just, it's not just stop printing, it's stop printing at an exponential pace. So if any length of time goes on where they contract money supply and fiscal stimulus, and so if you just the whole stack, I'm not going to get stuck in one kind of round and round circle, but all of the if you contracted money supply or kept it even for any length of time, and the market is naturally deflationary, then the whole debt rate resets, because you have to first understand how big the debt problem is. The debt problem globally is $400 trillion, approximately $400 trillion. And if you tried to pay back that at $1 a second, it would take 12,873,000 years to pay back. But remember, and this is key to remember, when people say growth, productivity growth is more deflationary. So when people are saying growth, you just in your head say, wait, that makes things cheaper faster and makes the debt reset faster. So let's use this example in Riverside for a second. If the company is making very little money, right, and all of the money that serviced the debt used to come from a whole bunch of jobs across the industry and flights to places to meet people and all of the media landscape that used to create this, and it could only touch very few people. Then all of that expense, kind of that growth, pays back the debt. Now you take what's happening today, and the total sum of all of that media, that the dollars to be that, and that's just one industry that touches way more people, is a fraction of what it was. And so it falls in price, and the debt becomes unrepayable because you have only a very little bit of money to pay back the debt now.
And how can we now transition, like if we have this abundant future where we are living in a Bitcoin or sound money system where we don't have this inflationary system, like now we are in an extremely inflationary system, and how can we come there? And like, do you have like a timeline for this?
Yeah,
I guess it's really hard to
I'm
predict.
I'm asked this all the time, and it's probably the timeline's right now, right? So if you're living in Bitcoin, so I suspect, Robin, you're living mostly in Bitcoin.
I have since 2021, everything that I own is in Bitcoin.
Yeah, so you're Robin, you're already living in this system, right? And in your world, like mine, all prices are falling forever. Like I use this example often, but my house that used to be $1.4 million is now 2.1 million in Canadian dollars. In measured in Bitcoin in the same time frame was 300 Bitcoin, and now it's 35 Bitcoin. And in 4 years from now, I suspect my house will be worth 3.5 Bitcoin. And so if you do run that economic calculation, I asked myself, in fact, here's a really funny story. I had this conversation on the weekend with a friend, very wealthy, who couldn't understand Bitcoin. And a long time ago, I did a Lightning transaction to him. So I said, just pull up your wallet. He goes, oh, I haven't been in it in a long time. He goes, I remember you gave me $10. It was really simple. But and I said, okay, just pull up your wallet. And it's $50. And he was, and I said, now just imagine, will all of your prices of food and housing and everything gone up? If you measure it in this, if you just put more of your wealth in this at the same time, every price would have gone down. And it finally clicked for him what was happening. And so he was measuring through the system that was stealing his money instead of the system that was not. And that's pretty profound because it means all over the world, anyone can move their time and energy to the new system. And as they do, the acceleration of that time frame happens faster. So there's a lot of people right now who don't do what you do, who don't do what I do. In other words, they're still spending their energy in the fiat system, and they're making the fiat system stronger. Right? They're fighting with everything they have. And even some of the ones that are hedged, they think they're hedged. Okay, well, I have 5% of my money over in Bitcoin, so I'm okay. They don't realize they're actually making the system stronger with their actions and their time inside the system that is actually stealing everybody's time. So what drives the time frame? What drives the time frame is every one of us understanding it and moving our time to something that is valuable and giving us back our time.
Interesting. I always make the example with the street, like Bitcoin. If you're on a Bitcoin standard, you're like running on a solid street, which is not giving in. And if you're like on a fiat standard, it's like you're running on sand. You're still running, you're still earning money, you can still kind of live. It depends on what kind of sand you're living in. And when I think about like the whole game theory and the ones who adopt Bitcoin first is like the ones that benefit from it the most because they were the early adopters. But at the same time, it also benefits the ones that are critical thinking and they are doing like the hard work and the brave work before the other ones. But then I also think of like, what if China or like a really big state decides to print a bunch of money and make war on the countries and the institutions that adopt the Bitcoin standard to like trying to fight the switch to like a sound money system? What do you think of the whole game theory thought?
Yeah, so let's run through some of these examples because and that's why I have a hard. So I think you know the answer, but you're doing this for your audience, right? So let's imagine you have 20% people on Bitcoin. Let's say a country is on Bitcoin, and another country is printing money. What would happen to the currency that's printing money?
Devalued really fast.
What would happen with Bitcoin measuring that currency?
Shoot up.
Measure the exactly. So you and again, all of these things come from measuring Bitcoin from the system that's debasing. And use this example. So the U.S. is losing value as well. It's just not losing value as fast as the rest of the currencies on the planet. So if you were in Venezuela and you could come in and invest in Google in 2000, right, and trade your dollars for something that's cash flow was going to be in US dollars. Seems like a pretty good trade, right? You're taking a dollar you know is going to lose value really quickly into something that's going to hold its value relative to the Venezuelan dollar, and into a company that's going to increase its value to society from that trade, and the cash flows are going to be denominated in the U.S. currency. So you actually have a double win. You're outside of your existing currency, and you're inside a company that's creating cash flows in a more stable currency. Now, do that same economic calculation right now from any currency on the planet into Bitcoin, and then some of the companies that are growing on top of Bitcoin. That's what's happening. And so we're so early in this peer-to-peer internet that's emerging on top of Bitcoin that's actually an opportunity right now. And that's exactly what's happening. And Bitcoin it doesn't matter what currency you're talking about. And it doesn't actually matter what any government does, because they can't stop. If it, I'm going to back up. If it wasn't decentralized and secure, then governments could stop it, and they could stop it. And so the key, Bitcoin is more decentralized and secure every single year from the Genesis block to today, and it continues to get so more decentralized and secure at the base layer. And so the amount of what that would have to look like on an attack, it just makes it unfeasible. It's not able to be broken. So if it stays decentralized and secure, and I always say if, because then people will do their own homework to understand what we're saying and they go deeper. If it remains decentralized and secure, in history, through all of our history books have never had something that was decentralized and secure, then two things have to happen. All of our history books on what money has to look like, what political systems need to look like on top of that broken money, with an error code that if you could control the money, you steal the productivity at a certain rate of all of society and transfer it to yourself. So you know for sure throughout human history, people will do that because greed will take over. If you could break it, you would. And there was never something like Bitcoin that was decentralized and secure. And the winners write the history books. Then that means all of our history has this flaw in the data. And all of our constructs for how we organize society, including all of economics, is based on that flaw in the data and that construct. And then you had a discovery, Bitcoin, that was the first time in history that you could ever have something decentralized and secure without an institution for trust, completely headless. So if that's true, it would change everything. It would change the future because she doesn't care. It doesn't care what I think about it. You think about it. It doesn't care about what governments think about it. It doesn't care. It just imposes a new discipline on the world, and it's an honest ledger. And that imposition of that every 10-minute block being the truth changes all of the future and all of our constructs, what we think about politics, economics, everything else, because it's imposing that discipline. One of the things it means is forever, all prices will fall against Bitcoin. Forever.
I like the euro chart reversed. Like usually people are typing in Google Bitcoin euro or Bitcoin US dollar, and then they see Bitcoin rising. But it's actually really cool if you just flip that and you see how everything and then all the currencies, and you can even do that with like stocks and stuff like that. And there's like rarely an asset that can even keep up of over a short amount of time, no matter like if you look at 10 years. And I think the same will happen decades to come because Bitcoin is that secure, sound money system.
Can I
Really,
just say something?
yeah.
It's not even I think, it's inevitable. If it stays decentralized and secure, nothing will stop that from happening. Nothing. And that's actually why, for me, I've done so much work to can it stay decentralized and secure. Now, I know what governments will do, and some will say, well, I'm going to make self-custodial illegal, and I'm going to do this to try to capture it, to try to create the same monetary standard we have today that's controlled by a few at the top. I know I know all of the games that will be played to try to do that. And that's why I'm very confident it's going to stay decentralized and secure. But assuming that is true, it doesn't matter. None of the noise matters at all. It's repricing everything.
I love how you think about Bitcoin and all the implications and the really simple examples that show that. And how did like your entrepreneurial background and your like life experience and you say like what the governments will do and stuff like that, how did this all like influence that, and what learnings did you get from the pre-Bitcoin or pre that time, whether Jeff Booth that thought in the early days, oh, inflation is good, oh, we need soft money. Like, how did this all change, and how did your learnings of the life go into what we just discussed the last like 20 minutes?
Yeah, well, I'll say from an entrepreneur, what you end up doing is you see an insight that other people don't see with technology or something, and the world doesn't see what you see, and you go where the future is going to be, not where it is now, and you go and create something that you think is going to deliver tons of value. Now, remember, when you do that, most people are living in a different world. They don't see the future you see. So it's excruciating, because both, you could be totally wrong, you could be crazy, right? But you think you're right, and then if you can create something that the world doesn't see, and the further ahead of that you are, the less people see. So raising capital into that is hard. Understanding where and so I've lived my life doing that and understanding that calculation, right? And anybody who funds you is also betting on your ability to essentially bend reality where you think it's moving to. Now, the war of that, how many things you learn about yourself and how many mistakes you make. And I'll say one of my biggest things was, it was never outside of me, but I always thought it was outside of me. I thought it was, so sometimes you would blame this event on something else. It was always internal. It was, and so sometimes I was early, sometimes I was, and timing plays a huge role in this. But tons of lessons on the way through there, and I've just always been curious. I've been curious about, okay, where do I make mistakes? And when I see that, and the pattern keeps repeating, I know it's me, instead of the world. And so it's just driven a deep, deep curiosity about a whole bunch of things. And I read about 50 books a year, and I have for 35 years, more than that. So I don't even know, I can't even say, where does the knowledge come from? Because people impact you in ways, and every different discussion impacts you in ways that you can't even tell for sure. Was that my original thought, or did it come into my consciousness from somebody else, and then I refined it further, and created something? But once you have broad, different various ideas from lots of different things, and you're really curious, then your mind picks up on patterns faster. And I would say, if I said from what we're talking about here, what I would say a general conclusion that I can draw from all of this experience is, most people don't predict the future. They predict the present forward. And to predict the future, you have to look at what has changed, right? And then you have to say, is that change stable? Like in what we're talking about in Bitcoin, that change is a change we've never seen before. So I can understand if we've never seen something like Bitcoin, and that change, that discovery is so great, I can understand why people would not trust it. But I can't understand why people wouldn't be curious about it, right? Because if it's that bar, then it demands curiosity to say, because that's what I did. I want to try to disprove that thought. And then if it is true, if it is that great a change, like the internet was before it, right? If it was that great a change, then going forward, all things would be different. So I don't look from here going forward. I look from what this means going backwards. Because what ends up happening is, most people can't, because the change is so great, they carry all of their baggage from one system into the new system. And I wrote about this, and it's like Blockbuster putting candy aisles in their stores, right? Or what monopolies do from the old system to try to protect the old monopoly. They do tinkering around the edges, and it's already over. And what I would say in Bitcoin, time frame all depends on how many of us understand it and how many of us move our time and how fast we do it. Because the faster more people move their time, the faster the time frame. But I can say this: it's already inevitable. It's going to happen.
It's like I sometimes draw that comparison, like watching last night's game with knowing who won. It's like but the only thing different is, like watching last night's game with knowing who won does not make fun, and I think being in Bitcoin still makes a lot of fun.
Yeah, exactly. It's so much fun, and then you're meeting people that are already living there, and they're not scared of the rest of everything else. And so I actually see a level of consciousness rising. Like people's lives are getting dramatically better in this. The amount of emails I get per day about people that have reached is so touching, that I've changed their life, and like literally changed their life because their perspective has changed. They're hopeful. They that translates into their families. There translates into their businesses and everything else. And when you're hopeful and you're moving from fear and nihilism because of that fear from what you were living in to hope, your life just changes because you are the change. You can create anything you want. And so as you move to more of your time with a whole bunch of other people that are aligned to that same truth, right? All it is an honest ledger. It's more than that, but it's an honest ledger that is going to be the new peer-to-peer internet bounded by energy, but it's an honest ledger. As you move into truth and you see that, and all of the other people who understand what you do, what I do, you see it everywhere. And you see this incredible future rolling out across the planet, and you're just wanting more people to understand that they themselves don't have to wait for their government's approval. They don't have to wait for a large corporation to say it's okay. They can front run it all and change their entire perspective on their life. So it's really powerful.
And when we like move further in the future, where like Bitcoin is like the standard unit of account, medium of exchange, store of value of our generation, of our like living, what is changing on like the entrepreneurial spirit compared to like right now, or like from 10 years ago?
So nothing. It accelerates. And that acceleration is in service of all of us. And so for your new listeners, there is no such thing, and this is going to be hard for them to understand, because if they're living in a fiat construct, they're carrying all their baggage forward. So they're going to wonder how debt operates, how I buy a house, without realizing that the price of the house today holds a monetary premium because people store their wealth there. Because if they stored it in the bank, it loses value. So then they have to have a house with a staggering mortgage just to try to get into the game. And all of that is stealing their time and energy to support the existing system. Whereas in the new system, the house just keeps on falling in price forever to its utility value. And the utility value then falls because the utility value of a house, it doesn't hold a monetary premium anymore. It's not a store of value, right? Because Bitcoin becomes a better store of value. And so as prices fall relative to Bitcoin, you need way less debt to service it. And so that's just one example. But political systems, we don't have a political system in this world, in this construct, that could accurately describe what Bitcoin gives us. Because all of these, communism, Marxism, totalitarianism, capitalism, even capitalism, it's based on the free market. It's the idea behind capitalism as a free market, but we know we don't live in a free market at all. It's captured by money, manipulated money. We know we don't live in a democracy because you have no vote in how much money is stolen from you each year through inflation. And remember, it's not inflation from 0 to 5 or 10%. It's inflation from what the natural rate of deflation should be. And today, if the natural rate of deflation should be negative 5%, then if your inflation rate is 10%, you're getting your pocket picked by 15% a year, compounded. And so and people don't realize that because they're measuring from 0. And they think, 2% inflation is okay. Well, why is 2% theft okay? Especially it's not 2%. It's a lot greater than that, because we already know the natural state of a free market is deflationary. And that means every construct we have here, every construct of economics, most people are so confused about economics, and it's designed to be confusing, to be able to mask that that money is stolen. Because here's how simple economics is. We want to trade with people all over the world. We want value. And the natural output of that trade is deflation, because people compete to give us more value. That's economics. That's it. Everything else you hear is nonsense.
I'm super excited to announce that this podcast got the first ever sponsor. 21 Bitcoin is Bitcoin only from day one, and they teach and preach self-custody. This is my go-to exchange when someone asks me, oh, where can I buy my Bitcoin from? This is the easiest entry for Bitcoiners. And if you want lower fees, plus at the same time support this podcast, use code Robin and click the link in the description. When I hear this, it's like so interesting for me, because it also speaks to like, you have to unlearn a lot of things that you learn through your life. And maybe like quick story from my orange pilling moment. I was 3 years of the opinion that Bitcoin is a scam, and asset needs a cash flow. Like I was in that stock investors mindset, and in Warren Buffett mindset. And I had a discussion with a friend, and I just discovered that I kind of ran out of arguments against Bitcoin. And then I wanted to go into Bitcoin really deep, and was like, I want to prove him wrong. Like I wanted to prove my friend wrong. And I started this journey on a Friday, and I was like, okay, this weekend I have nothing planned. I will say no to every friend, and I will just dive into deep Bitcoin. And then on Monday, I will call him and say why he's an idiot.
Yep.
And in this weekend, I discovered that, oh shit, maybe I'm wrong. And on Monday, I opened my Coinbase account and bought my first Bitcoin with that. And it speaks also, I think, to the humbling moments, especially when you first discover Bitcoin. And I think you also talk about like your companies also call it ego death capital. You could talk about how Bitcoin kills your ego and how it humbles you. And I think that's an amazing thing. Is that why ego death capital is called ego death capital, right?
Yeah, that's the idea behind it, and and my partners came up with that. But exactly the death of the ego, to be able to understand that and it's related far more than just to Bitcoin, but Bitcoin, I think, actually drives that along, and the output of that is a higher consciousness in society. I think is what we're going to see, and it creates. And when you can really do that, actually, when yours is a very good story, because I think what is polarizing for Bitcoin is somebody didn't understand it, and then they get it, and then they believe that everybody else should get it like that, and they're yelling at everybody else, and they drive them further and further away. And we have to realize you almost have to meet people where they are, not where you are, because it seems like such a stretch. It's the first time in history. It's the first time ever that we've had something like this. So it would, and then if there's the first time ever that we've had something like this, and the control structure, it destroys the control structure and the manipulation of money that accrues to the wealthiest and the people in control today, and the three-letter word agencies. If it takes all of that ill-gotten gains that funds war and everything else, and redistributes it to society writ large, then those agencies and everything else would have something. They would try everything to attack it. And if those agencies are embedded with our news today, and they're embedded, and they can essentially bribe different money and through money to be able to infiltrate organizations and everything else inside of this, then you would expect that all of the people you know are mostly looking through the system of misinformation, trying to convince them how scary this new system is. So I have empathy for the people that are stuck there, because if you're watching regular mainstream news, you're inside the system of control. All of the fights within that system are designed to keep the system intact, right? The left, right, all of this is within the system, trying to drive it more into the system. It's all because you can't change a system from a system. So all these things are 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 kind of stealing more and more of your energy because of fear, right? Whatever side of a conflict you're on, whatever side of a debate you're on, driving more and more fear. That it is that Bitcoin thing. Oh, those are just those crazy people, right? And you stay stuck in you're stuck in your silo of fear. So I completely understand it. And then you have a whole bunch of Bitcoiners who have already seen this, tried to disprove it, been over there, and forgotten that just 2 years ago, just 1 year ago, just 6 months ago, they were one of the others. So I find the whole thing fascinating.
Yeah, it's interesting how it develops always. And when I started out with Bitcoin, I wanted to tell everybody, like I wanted to be like on a mission and turn around all my family members. Turns out most are not that interested in it, or I'm not that good in explaining it. And I switched to the strategy, or like I switched just my life, that I'm like searching a channel online where I can just put out what I think. And also with that, all my friends and family see that online. And the interesting thing that happens is that the people that are actually interested in it are like, oh, that's an interesting thought. And I also clip out the podcast with small snippets and post it
Yeah,
all over my social media. So like because it's really hard for people to watch like a 1 hour thing
yeah,
about Bitcoin when they're not even interested in it. But maybe they see like 10 seconds on Instagram feed and it spikes some curiosity. And I saw that then people are coming to me and like, oh, what is this? Where can I find my information? And then I have some sources I can give to them. And that's a way more effective way if they have some interest, some level of like, oh, I want to know about what's going on there.
yeah. And that's it. The and that spark, I think about Bitcoin almost as a prism, or as you first find what through it what you're interested in, right? And there's all of these different, whether it's game theory, whether it's deflation, whether it's you find the thing that cracks this veil of this world that you live in, that pulls you in to say, wait, there's something here that solves this problem. And then as you go deeper and deeper, you realize it solves all of the other problems too. Right. And so when you were talking about this to somebody else, it's really, when I think about it, I just look at it inversely. What is their problem? What is the thing that they care about all the time? And then I try to get them to try to solve it through the existing Fiat lens. And then they realize, it's impossible. And then they're more open.
Talk about Fiat, and I think this will be a good point now to start. I asked, like, I think 2 hours ago on Twitter, and I got actually a lot of responses that I interview now in 2 hours, and there's like 1 hour window where people can ask questions. And there was like two interesting questions in there. The first one is like, how long can Fiat survive? And the more interesting part of the question is like, will Bitcoin extend or shorten the time that Fiat is around if it's not surviving for long?
It can survive for a long time. It can. It's a. The best way to say it is it can survive as long as people keep giving it power. And what we're discussing right now, and 99% of the planet is still giving it power, like it controls them, and it only gains its power from extracting it from them. So until that flips, it can survive for a long time. And if I would say the highest probabilities of what this looks like is wars, expanding wars. You've reached almost a Nash equilibrium you have with nuclear powers, right? That won't press the button because you could end most of life on the planet, and that's kind of But now other nations are developing nuclear powers too, and you back one of those into a corner too far, and that could happen. That could escalate. So I'm just talking about the probabilities from the existing system as this existing system deteriorates. You also have artificial intelligence moving at an exponential rate. And remember, the artificial intelligence has been moving at the exact same rate since the 50s. It's just been an exponential, and people are measuring it linearly. So they couldn't see the movie unfold. So they're watching a frame of the movie instead of the entire movie. And so if you're watching the actual movie and how fast it moves from here, you see a totally different thing. Now to take that into drones and robotics and everything else, and all of those prices, meaning in your backyard you could create a drone weapon or a swarm of drone weapons for almost no cost, AI enhanced, that could digitally target people anywhere. And this is coming, so it's going to change warfare in a crazy way. And it's on the verge of doing that right now. And in a year from now, year and a half from now, it'll be so much more pervasive. So meaning, if you're concentrating control up and manipulating money, while technology is doing this, more and more people are so mad at this system that they create these things, and they create, when more countries so mad at the system trying to, that this is going to expand conflict everywhere. That is unfortunately probability of where we're going. And then that'll drag more of us, probably not Bitcoiners, but more people saying, how dare they, and amp up, right? And so and it'll keep this system intact, because that's, the system demands it. It has to create other enemies for you to steal, to have your time sucked into this, and your fear or anger will keep you in it. So that's this system. It's already unstable. The only way it can do this is more and more increasing fear-based, control-based mechanisms that remove individual rights and freedoms. Unfortunately, that's what it looks like. So you can just say, at the same time, technology is making that happen, and Bitcoin's moving the other way. Hope, truth, abundance, expanding. And the fight we are all living in, the real fight we're all living in, the actual one, is, which world do we want to live in? And if we want to live on the one that is a base layer of truth, that offers hope and abundance to society, then we need to move more of our time into it. And so it's easy to be a Bitcoiner and tell what everybody else should do, but start as a Bitcoiner, moving more of your time into it. And by moving more of your time into it, you'll see everything expand. Like I say all the time, I can't believe what I get to do. I cannot believe it. I pinch myself. What I get to see, the most brilliant entrepreneurs on this planet building on this, all on a truthful layer, that are not going anywhere. They're expanding, and their lives are changing, and their lives are changing because they're delivering value to other people at a crazy rate. And I get to be involved in this. I cannot believe it. I have so much gratitude for what I get to do. And so that world is expanding. How long can Fiat stay? How bad does this get through it? It all depends on the rate of more people moving more of their time and energy over. And when things are happening that are terrible out of this system that I can't change, they're going to happen. It not co-opting you into it, not pulling you back into it, that you're spending your energy creating the world that you want to create.
I think an amazing view on that. As you said, you're working in the Bitcoin field so deep, and you're involved with so many companies and projects. Like, I think it would be a long task to list them all and what you're doing and where are you involved. But maybe, like, what's the most exciting thing you're currently working on, and what's like the plan for you, and going forward, what you want to achieve for like the next 5, 10, 20 years?
So the thesis of the fund, Ego Death Capital, was effectively, and it came, and honestly, it came from me being a hypocrite. This same conversation, I saw it in myself. And when I see something in myself, you asked the entrepreneurial journey, right? Same thing here. Same thing here. When I see something that I'm acting not congruent with what I say, it creates I have to solve that. I have to solve that paradox. I have to, in myself. And so had a hedge. I wrote the book Price of Tomorrow. I knew where this was going. I investigated thoroughly the existing system, and I realized it couldn't transition to the world that people would want to live in from that system. The system problem so great. A system can't change the system. It has to be. You have to have a new system imposing a new system, and to be able to build a bridge to the other side. So I knew this. Then I investigated Bitcoin kind of as I was writing the book. I'd already bought a little bit, but I really started investigating as I wrote the book, and started doing more work. And even at the end of that, I probably had a kind of in my own mind. This wasn't true for Bitcoin, but in my own mind, I still had a probability of it failing about 5%. And so I tried to disprove everything I'm saying here. And I went down similar to you, down the sand in Bitcoin. In every way it could be broken, and what would happen, and if this happened, what would happen? If this happened, what would happen? And all of the different attack vectors. And I realized, it's not Bitcoin. It's my own mind that couldn't see how decentralized and secure it is, and how I couldn't believe, just like I'm saying to a lot of, I understand why people couldn't. I couldn't believe that you could have a discovery like this that was like this, because it never happened before. So I had to get comfortable in that. And so as I tried to disprove it, I did the same thing as you. I came to understand it at a deeper level, and what would happen as a result. Once I understood that, then I put more of my wealth in there. And I was on podcasts, and I was traveling around the world, and people were saying, "Oh, you're great," and everything else. And I was still 90% of my time was in the fiat world, and 10% of my time was in Bitcoin. And my boards were all in the fiat world, and my advisory work was in the fiat world. And I woke up kind of one day and I went, "Oh my God, you're doing this, right? How could the world change if people that know this are spending 90% of their time in the fiat world?" And so that caused me to want to move all of my time, or as much of it as it can, onto Bitcoin. And what was my highest best use, or highest best, what am I really good at? I'm really good at helping entrepreneurs create the future that they want, because I've kind of made so many mistakes on my own way, and I see these patterns. And so helping, that's why the venture capital fund, to be able to invest in the best entrepreneurs creating this. And the thesis of that was, the thesis of the first fund was, this is so early on a new peer-to-peer internet that most people don't even understand the base layer, kind of the TCP/IP, the base layer of the new internet would be Bitcoin. And so they certainly don't understand what's being built on top. And it's really early on all of the layers that are being built on top that are going to transition us faster to this. So can we invest in the entrepreneurs that are building the rails that create the acceleration, so that allow billions of people to come in to use this, simpler, easier, more effective for them, and accelerate what's happening. So that was the basis of the first fund. It's been incredibly successful. And we're just in the process of raising Fund 2 right now, which would be $100 million fund, to be able to accelerate it further. Because at the time when we did it, and that's probably part of the reason for a smaller fund in the beginning, the ecosystem wasn't mature enough. So we had to help entrepreneurs and develop where it's moving now. And now what's happening is, you can see this wall of money starting to understand, and this acceleration of some of these companies, crazy acceleration of some of these companies, that provide value to people in a way that's hard to describe.
So I think a really good journey to be on, and I'm in a similar situation because I worked 40 hours in a Fiat job. Now turn it down to 25. I'm starting to get my social media presence on the off the ground. I'm working now with Bitcoin companies together to make my time more and more into Bitcoin, because it's at a similar, at a different stage, but a similar light bulb moment where I'm like, oh, I'm talking a lot about Bitcoin, but most of my time is in a normal Fiat job. So it's that was an
Totally.
interesting journey for me also.
And by the way, that's the thing that accelerates it. So one leg of the stool, if you tried to explain TCP/IP to people, most people wouldn't even know what it is. But all of the internet relies on that base layer to be able to not fail, because otherwise everything on top of it would fail. All of the other layers on top of it would fail. And so today in Bitcoin, people don't even understand Bitcoin, the base layer. But that also creates the opportunity. So when you think about HTTP on layer 4 of the internet, then bringing in all of the entrepreneurs that created the internet. And remember, the iPhone was created in 2007 using the same protocol stack, those layers of the internet. You think it's 17 years later, the iPhone comes out, and wow, we can't even imagine what life will look like before it, right? Before the smartphone. But I was part of early in the internet. I understood, it was clunky. Things didn't work and everything else. And the entrepreneurs are building it. And then why I say, as you abstract some of these things more and more on a stable foundation, the value that accrues to society is staggering, and they can't see it today. So most of the things that would give us value, right, we don't know is on top of a broken monetary system that is extracting a whole bunch of value in a different way, creating a different negative externality. When we now marry things that are giving us value that are actually don't have those negative externalities, that are restoring the free market, restoring the power to us, it accelerates both. But people won't, in a lot of cases, they won't need to understand Bitcoin like you do, or I do, or anything else. They're going to be just getting so much value out of the product or service that they're using on top of it. That's just going to be a native part of, they don't have to, just like they don't do the deep work on what TCP/IP is today.
Yeah, and I also think a lot about it because when Bitcoin is that base layer of the future financial, like Bitcoin will be the base layer of the future financial system, and so many people use like Facebook, YouTube, and all the internet applications that are above on all the layers, but probably only like a really, really small amount of people on Earth can explain how TCP/IP, the base layer, actually works. I'm a software engineer, and I could not even really explain it well enough for a large audience to actually understand how the whole internet layer thing works out. So I think, and maybe like you can give me your thoughts on that. I think most people will never really truly understand Bitcoin, but they will still use it.
Exactly. So exactly the same. Now, if you want to, it just tells you how early we are right now to be able to understand these different layers. Now, in a protocol stack, so why is that hard to understand, and why do protocols like that take everything? Why are they winner take all markets? Because the protocol is designed to create other value on top of it, right? And so today we live on a protocol stack that is largely extractive. The idea of the internet was decentralize everything and create this, but because of the money, it turned into an advertising model where our brains slow down. Will slow down at a car crash. So how do you sell more advertising? More car crashes, because people get sucked into it, and so they're trading their most valuable thing into an algorithm that is more car crashes, so that the advertising companies can make more and extract more. So they're the product inside this, making it more and more stronger. And now it's not just an algorithm. Now there's these AI models that every single person, it's extracting your attention to try to make you stay, to sell more advertising. Bitcoin, because it's not advertising related, it's decentralized and secure, and it doesn't need advertising to be able to drive it. It changes that paradigm as well. So you probably use Nostr as well, which is a communication platform on top of Bitcoin. That if you take your it's early days, but if you take your if you want a client, which would be like Twitter, but a whole bunch of different clients, if that algorithm you don't like, you can take your keys and you can move it to a different client, and all of your contacts follow you and all of your content follows you. And so it's not a walled garden that is monetizing you by stealing your attention. It's always your content. It's always your followers. And so now you have clients competing for you in service to you. So they provide more value. And if you ever at any time don't like the algorithm, it's showing you things you don't like, you just move your stuff to a different one. And it competes for you. So you have the free market giving back that value. Other things you can do. I pay for most of my coffee through tips that I make in Nostr, in that, because people, just because I'll put up a post, somebody will give you 1,000 sats or 500 sats, and it's lots of different people do that. And so what they're saying is, I value you, and you've helped me in this way, or this post has helped me in this way. And it's not an advertising generated. So while that's still young, and while it's still growing, you can see all of these things that are restoring our power back to us, and what they look, and the different business models that emerge out of that, and what that looks like. And you can see what could happen or will happen on a bunch of these different technologies. I think the other thing I just should mention is protocols don't come around very often. We're used to looking at new companies, or used to looking at, in this order, new companies, then new technologies, and then protocols. Don't come around very often, and they have very interesting characteristics. They come in layers. Each layer has to ossify, has to harden, and it can't do a whole bunch of things at that layer, because if it trades off doing a whole bunch of things at a base layer, it risks compromising the protocol. There's just too many attack vectors. So that's what Bitcoin did. All it does really well is decentralization and security, and is that time chain for each new block. But it does it at the expense of scalability and smart contracts and everything else in the base layer. And it ossifies. It gets harder and harder and harder to do that, more decentralized, more secure. And then the next layer builds on top of it. And the same thing happens at the next layer. And why people misunderstood it so much and went to Ethereum and all the other coins that are going to go to zero is because because protocols don't come around very often, and each layer ossifies. And so now layer 2 in Lightning every 10 minutes comes back down to layer 1. So you have a trade-off for scalability that centralizes Lightning a little bit versus layer 1 in Bitcoin. But by doing that and coming back down to layer 1 every 10 minutes, doesn't risk the whole stack. And so if those come around very infrequently, and they unlike other things that we see, technology or companies on top of the technology, then it would be really easy to misunderstand what's happening, because they ossify and they take time to develop, and you can't see what is possible on the new layer until it's already there. And then until entrepreneurs then reach in and develop on top of that new layer applications that change the world.
Yeah, it's like everything will actually be built on top of Bitcoin, and
Everything.
yeah, I had small phase from like when I started in 2020 and went all in 2021 in Bitcoin. Like there was in that 1 year experimentation and in Ethereum and another really small token. I don't even want to mention it because it's so small. Was this realization that Bitcoin, and I don't even know where I heard it, but Bitcoin, because I came from the company mindset, that stock flow mindset, Warren Buffett mindset, I'm like, Bitcoin is not a company. Bitcoin is a protocol. And that was really hard for me in the first like few months to understand. And I had this technology background. Even I had this DC. I knew what the layers are. I learned it in school. I had to learn it, and still it was really hard for me to understand. And yeah, it's really important to always like keep mentioning it, that Bitcoin is a protocol, and you should not diversify in Ethereum or
Totally.
anything else. Yeah.
Totally. But Robin, that's a really important thing that you just said, because because there's a whole bunch of technologists that people just turn off their brain and don't do the work because they think, okay, the technology person said that this new technology is better than Bitcoin, when it's really, it can't be. Right. If you do the work here, you understand this protocol is like none other, and nothing else will survive. And I don't say that lightly. I say it so, and you could look at my work on this. And I wrote an article called "Finding Signal in a Noisy World." You could find it on jeffbooth.ca. But it's now at 2 years old, that article, and nobody has given me a plausible. I've asked for it, a plausible way that isn't how this was working out. Now, like you said, it's some people have to read it 5, 6, 10, 20 times before it finally clicks. But this is very, very different than what the majority of the planet thinks it is.
It's very, very true. And unfortunately, we are coming to the end of the podcast. I want to, we have an end routine in the podcast where the previous guest asks a question for the next guest. And my last guest was Ella Huff. You probably know her, the daughter of Lisa.
Love Ella. She's fantastic.
And she asked the question, what should young people be focused on for the next years?
Spending more time understanding this first, and then once they understand it, spending more time in this ecosystem. So this ecosystem is going to see an incredible amount of growth. And if you can insert yourself into that, now it's an open monetary network, it's an open platform, it's an open technology, open protocol. So what that means is you could do anything and move your time. You could start a meetup locally. By starting a meetup locally, you'll meet other people in this and you'll start to see different opportunities. I will tell you this for sure, because I'm seeing a bunch of these companies growing so fast in this space. They're all looking for great talent. And every one of the Bitcoin companies that is growing so fast and looking for talent would much prefer Bitcoiners, because most of the work is already done. Now you still need skill sets and whatever. So now how do you make yourself valuable and how do you meet those people? I'll give you a quick hint. I used to hire people before I would place a job on a job board. There would be people trying to kind of very rarely happened, but the people that were trying to give me value first, and they loved what I was doing. Who do you think got jobs before you placed them on a job board? Right. So instead of trying to compete fish where everybody else is fishing, go and provide value, and go and think about providing value to other people in the world that you want to create, and it'll just expand for you. So there's lots and lots of companies here that are going to be, they won't look exactly the same because the fiat system is very, very different. So it won't be a monopoly type of system. They're going to constantly have to innovate. But there are a bunch of the different companies right now will look like in time the Googles and the Microsofts of the future. And these are being developed right now, and that's going to expand. So it's an incredible time to move your energy into this and just start. Like you, Robin, you started a podcast. That's a way. By starting a podcast, we met, right? And you're meeting a whole bunch of different people. That will expand. Other people will start meetup groups or meet different entrepreneurs. But as you start spending your time in this ecosystem, it'll expand.
I even had Arsen from the Relay app on a few episodes ago. Like it's not published now, but it will be published when this episode will be published or it's out. And he told the story how he got the job at Relay on the podcast, and he basically took that hint or that blueprint that you just gave to one-on-one, because he spammed Julian and I think Imo both with post ideas and how they can improve the social media presence. And now he is the social media lead on the Relay app. So I think that just a few episodes ago, exactly what you said, and real world present and story where people can go through and listen to.
That's excellent.
So for the end, thank you first of all, thank you of being on. And like when people want to get in contact you, what is the best way to reach out to you?
Through EgoDeath. My email there is jeff@egodeath.capital. But if you're following me on social media, just please stay updated. I'm less on social media these days. I spend some time on Nostr, but why I say stay updated, check my website, jeffbooth.ca, before following any other accounts. There's just too many scammers out there. I will never ask for money. So if you're following, just double check that the site you're following is me, because and you could do that on my website.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I have probably every second or third week some impersonator that even contacts my family.
Yeah.
I can only imagine when you have like, I don't know, like you have 400,000 followers and I have like 8,000. Like this magnifies, I think, a lot.
It's incredible. And so you can't reach in and protect everybody. So, but you can tell them to make sure that they follow the right accounts if they're going to follow the right accounts. And if people are asking you for money or trading tips and everything else, it's a scammer.
Yeah, 100%. That's general good advice. If Jeff Booth is asking you for an amazing trading opportunity, that's a real one.
Yeah.
Thank you for being on, Jeff.
Thank you.